Hey guys, today we've got a giant SCR reel wheel. It's generic in-house brand with a formula hub. I don't know if you can see the writing in there. And the free wheel here doesn't spin very well, which means that it needs to be rebuilt. So we're going to open this thing up, take a look inside. I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, once you get the cassette off, you need a proper working space. I had to change locations. We're going to need to remove the axle. In order to do that, you're going to need some wrenches and some elbow grease. We're going to start by removing this grommet here. You can just pinch it, grab it, pull on it. You can get it to come off. Set it aside. Now we're going to remove the axle. For this, you're going to need 17mm wrench or two of them. Use an adjustable wrench for one side. Then you're just going to unscrew. What this is going to do is open up the end caps. It's also going to expose the ball bearings down on the inside. So be careful when you're taking it apart. Take each piece of it and set it aside in the order that you're removing it, so you can remember how to put it back together. Got a washer in there, and then there are the ball bearings. You want to be careful so that you can keep track of the ball bearings and how many are each side. Then we'll go over that once we get everything out. Okay, once you get the balls out, you're ready to keep diving in. I'm going to show you that there's a retaining ring here, and it's made of metal, and it needs to come out so that you can get to the pieces that are underneath it. And this can be a bit tricky, but you're basically going to take a wrench here, an open-ended wrench, and just put some pressure on the sides of it. And you want to be careful because you don't want to bend it, but it will come out. So just being real gentle with it. Just keep prying around the edges until you get it to pop. And then you can use your finger and pull it out. And that's going to reveal underneath here the notches that we need to access in order to remove the Freehub body without removing it from the wheel. Okay, now we got to try to get this retaining cup out of here, and you see it's got two notches in there that you're supposed to use to remove it. It is possible to use a set of needle nose pliers or something like that. This is a Gerber, and you notch them in here. And the trick here is that this is reverse threaded, and then theoretically you would be able to twist it and get it to pop. This one is really tight, and I can't get it to do that. And I also want to be careful because if the pliers slip loose in there, you're damaging the area where your ball bearings are rolling. So you pick up a Freehub tool. Sounds unnecessary, but you can get one of these for about $10 on Amazon. I've got a link for one in the description. And it just slides right down in here and sets right into those notches. And then you can screw it in, set it in place here so that it won't slip, and it will give you the perfect bite to get this off of here. Let's get this in here, and you are going to turn it. If you're standing above the wheel, you're going to turn it down like this. That is reverse thread or opposite thread than what is normal. It's going to be super tight. And if you need a cheater bar, don't be afraid to use one. It will give way, and it's necessary in order to get in here. So here we go. Okay. So when it comes loose, if you're using this tool at this point, you're going to have to loosen up the tool a little bit so that you can get it open. Okay, so from here you can just use your fingers to unscrew. And when it comes loose, you set the wheel down. And then what you're going to do is just lift up on the Freehub body. And there you have it. You want to be very careful at this stage because you have all of these micro ball bearings floating around here. You can see all of these balls that have just fallen here by the side. And I want to be careful of it because you'll lose them as you try to get rid of them, clear them out. And then clean up the balls and then put it back together. We'll walk you through how to do that. Okay, once you've got the balls cleared out of here, you can remove the spacers right on the top. There's 3 in here. There's not a magical order to them, but there is one that's wider than the others. And there's no reason to screw that order up. So that wider one goes on the bottom, and then you've got 2 thinner ones here on the top. And so we're going to set those aside. And then we're going to use rubbing alcohol and just spray this down so we can clear it up, get the grease off of here. So what happens over time is that the grease starts to get sticky. And when it gets sticky, then the pawls no longer spring back like they're supposed to. If your Freehub is in pretty bad shape, then it would be possible for you to remove the pawls by taking the spring off. It's not a big deal. The spring just pops off and then you can take the pawls out. But in this particular situation, we're going to go ahead and leave them in there because the grease was concentrated on the outside and not underneath the pawls. Okay, when you're happy with the hub body here, you're going to move on to the cap. Basically the same procedure. Going to spray this with rubbing alcohol and then clean it out really well. Let's get all the gunk out of there. And then you'll do the same thing for the cap. And when you got that cleaned up, time to clean up the ball bearings. There's the little tiny ball bearings in here, and so we're just gonna take them out and put them on the rag. It's a paper towel so that we can kind of rub them around and get them cleaned off. Once you have those balls cleared off, it's time to start reassembling. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some all-purpose grease and a paintbrush. We're going to start with the cap. And that right there is the bearing race. We're going to smear it with grease like that. And then we're going to start putting the balls on there one at a time. This hub had 50 balls in it, and it's not a matter of just an even 25 on top and 25 on bottom, because the bottom is a bigger area, so it will have more balls in it. I'll give you the total number here in a second. So we're just going to keep putting these on here until it's all done. Okay, there it is. There's 24 of those balls on the top. And this is going to sit down in here like this. But what I'm going to do before I do that is set that down and take my paintbrush and paint a little bit of grease down inside of here. And you can see down inside that this thing is ribbed. It's got those edges in there that the pawls connect with. You want to do your best to keep grease off of there. So that's why the toothbrush works really well. That's why the paintbrush works really well. It allows you to apply specific amounts of grease without, getting it overdone. Okay. Now we're going to take the cap here like this, and we're going to slide this down in here like this. And then when you got it, hold it in place. And now we're ready to start working on the bottom. All right, we're going to do a similar thing here with the spindle, and we're going to use a paintbrush and apply grease. And I just want to say this again, you want to be very careful that you don't get the grease on the pawls. The whole reason we took this apart was to clear the grease off of there. This grease is specifically for the bearings. And so we're going to grease up this lower race so that we can put the balls on there and they stay on there and then they run smoothly. We will use a much lighter grease for the pawl area. Okay, once you got the grease on there, we repeat the same procedure. We just take these balls and we put them on here just like that. Okay, there we are with all the balls there on the bottom. Here is what this should look like. You can see the balls there in the top. And what we're going to do now is apply some grease here. Again, being very careful not to get it down inside the ratcheting part of this. All right, don't forget to put your spacing rings on the top here. We talked about using a different grease here. The guys at Global Cycling Network recommend using Shimano mineral oil, like their brake oil. So I'm going to put some on my finger here and just rub it around the outsides. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the inside of the cup. It's just enough to keep things running smooth without causing it to get gunked up. And then what we're going to do is just set this down here just like that. Now what will have happened is the cap here will have come up a little bit. So what we're going to do is get our tool and then slowly put that back in place so as not to disturb the ball bearings. Okay, now we're ready to tighten this down. And if you remember, this is reverse thread. So instead of turning it clockwise, we're going to turn it anti-clockwise till it goes down. I'm going to spin this and make sure that it runs smooth and that none of the balls got misaligned or out of place there. If you like the way that that sounds. So you can go ahead and put that back in there and then use a wrench to tighten it up. Now again, once you get it tight like that, you want to double check. Make sure that it still spins smoothly. Okay, once you get the Freehub body on, it's time to start putting the whole wheel back together. We're going to start by cleaning up the bearings that came from the inside. You could do this by just taking the balls and rubbing them around in a paper towel. Depending on how dirty they are, you might need to spray it down with alcohol or a degreaser, but oftentimes this is just enough to get the gunk off of them in order to apply new grease. So there are 18 balls, that's 9 for each side, so you can keep track of that as you reinstall them in your hub. We're going to start with the drive side, get my grease and my paintbrush, and just wipe the inside here with grease. Surprisingly, there is a thing as too much grease. You just want enough in there to coat the surface and keep the balls in there. You can even use this method here where you put a ball in the toothbrush and then you can insert it that way, and that way you know that you're getting grease on the balls as well as in the race there. Let's do that for all 9 of them. This is what it should look like when you get the balls in there. And now we're going to insert the cap that we took off of there by just pushing it down with our thumbs. It should go all the way down till it touches that race, and that will keep the balls in there as we flip it over and do the other side. Take a take a paintbrush and just prepare that race there by adding more grease. This side's definitely a little more tricky than the other side because you're having to work underneath there. I don't recommend removing that cap. I'm not even sure if it does come off. Then we're going to use a similar method of taking the balls and placing them inside the race there. You do that for all 9. After you get those balls installed, now it's time to assemble the axle. And this can be a little bit tricky. You need to remember which side that you unthreaded. And when we threaded ours apart, the drive side was the side that came unthreaded. So this is here the non-drive side, which works out great. Gonna grease. I've already greased up these bearing race here like that, and now I'm going to insert it in here. Hold everything together. Flip it over. Now I'm ready to start in on the drive side. And hopefully you kept all the pieces of it together so that you can reassemble it appropriately. If not, you might have a handful of pieces like this. There's a rubber gasket. There's the race nut. Then there's a cap, and then a retaining nut. And how this is going to end up sitting together is that this race nut is going to sit in that retaining cap like this. And then that washer, the ring there is going to sit like that. So you should end up with something that looks a little bit like this. This race nut and this retaining washer are grooved, so there's a certain way that it will go together and sits like that. And now basically what we do is just screw this on here. So you can hand tighten it. Rotate it around, make sure everything's running smoothly. Might be a little bit tight, and that's okay once we get this fixed up with the retaining nut. It should be good to go. So we'll just screw this down and then use our cone wrenches to tighten it up and set it in place. Okay, now it's time to set this nut, which is actually probably the hardest part of this project. You cannot do it without a cone wrench or something that's similar. These wrenches are unique and special because of how thin they are, and you need that thin wrench to get underneath the locking nut and hold what's underneath there. And then we can tighten this down. Now, the key though is that you can easily over tighten it, and so what often happens is that you get the top one to the place that you want it, and then you back the bottom one out until you get it to a place where it touches the top one and like bottoms out against it, and that way it won't come loose, and yet provides the hub the ability to spin freely without too much resistance. And that is how you rebuild this Formula road hub, which comes standard on early models of giant road bikes. Hope you enjoyed the video. Now go wrench on your bikes.